Good evening, everybody. Have a nice holiday.
Good evening, Rabbi.
Okay. So we're continuing with the laws of Yom Tov. Here we go. So we're doing bet today. So we read in the tour last time that certain laborers like Ipsira, Tchina, Bitsira. So what are we talking about? Harvesting, grinding, squeezing. Even though these are things which are used for consumption. Nevertheless, the rabbis forbade them, right? And we gave a reason for that, because we said, right, that if we allow you to do labors like this on Yom Tov, the problem will be that you're going to get consumed with, it's such as painstaking, and laborious kind of a thing. It's going to take up all your time. You won't have time to do the mitzvot of Yom Tov, which is the oneg, right, which is enjoying Yom Tov, and other things as well. But right, we want you to do that. You see from there, by the way, one thing, that since we want you to do oneg Yom Tov, which means enjoying the Yom Tov, just like we have a concept of enjoying the Shabbat, right? So you learn from there that a person also has a neshama yetera on Yom Tov, just like on Shabbat. He gets a special additional soul on Yom Tov, just like he gets on Shabbat. Even though the truth is, right, on Shabbat, it's a higher level, but nevertheless, it also exists on Yom Tov as well. So let's see what it says here about Yosef. That's why we want you to enjoy it. Why is that? Because when you enjoy it, the neshama that you have, the special neshama, the additional neshama, gets from that, right, the special, pleasure plus special whatever, and so it's considered to be a big mitzvah. I just remember, by the way, the son of Zohar Kadosh, something interesting about this. It says in Zohar Kadosh, I posted about this. You can find it in my posts, but it says in Zohar Kadosh, if a person is able to do oneg Shabbat, in other words, he's able to enjoy the Shabbat. How do you enjoy the Shabbat? Having a nice meal, like fancy, good quality meal, right? Not a weekday meal, right? That's what it's all about. So it says, right, that in the Zohar Kadosh, whoever doesn't do this mitzvah, and he is able to do it. So what does that mean? He's able. That means he can afford it. He has the money to do it. He has money to go buy good foods and good stuff. Good quality stuff. And he doesn't do it. He doesn't do this mitzvah. So it says, right, that it causes him poverty in the end, right? He loses, his parnasah. So meaning what? That a person has to take that seriously, right? To this mitzvah of oneg Shabbat, oneg Yom Tov. It's not a light thing. And by the way, who can resist something like that, right? It's very pleasurable. So why would you want to deny yourself of that? Obviously, right? And that's exactly why the rabbis forbade these labors on Yom Tov, in order that you should be able to do oneg Yom Tov. It shouldn't interfere with your mitzvah. So you see, it's a big thing. Okay, so let's see the Beit Yosef here. What does he say? I call Divrei Rosh. So he says, right, that this is from the Rosh, this halacha, Beresh Perek En Tzadin, right, over there in Sheba Le'apuke Mimayin Temashma Midivrei Rashi. So he comes to exclude, right, or to argue with whatever, take issue with what's implied in the Rashi, that Seda Asura Mideoraita. Okay, so there seems to be a machloket between the Rosh and Rashi, right? What else is new, right? There's always machloket. What else is new? All right, so there's a machloket over here. What's a machloket? It seems like according to Rashi, the labor of trapping on Yom Tov is forbidden from the Torah. But comes the Rosh and says, no, really from the Torah it's permitted. Why is that? Because it has to do with consumption, right? You trap the animal, you eat it, right? You're doing it for eating. So according to the Rosh, it's really permitted according to the Torah, but the rabbis forbade. Why did they do so? As we said, right, the reason just now that we gave. That's the reason why. That's what we talked about last week in the tour. So he says here, further on, וכן צידה אסור שפעמים שתעלה במצודתו דגים הרבה. So he says, right, that as we said, they also forbade trapping. כלומר, צידה אף אגב דלא שייך בה טעמה דאבינן כבקצייה ותחינה, ובצייה או סחיטה אסורה מטעם אחר שפעמים תעלה בצדתו דגים הרבה ודמה לעובדין דחול. Okay, so he says, right, something interesting that we already said, right, about the other labors as well, that we forbade, the rabbis forbade. As we said, harvesting, right, squeezing out, juice, whatever, all these kinds of things. Whatever, grinding, right? We said all these things. So, okay, fine, but what does that have to do with trapping, right? Because the reason we gave over there was because we're concerned you're gonna do it all the time, like it's gonna be very painstaking and laborious, and you're gonna take all your time. But when it comes to trapping an animal, it doesn't really take much time to do that. You can just put out, a trap, and it happens by itself. What's the big deal? Or you just like you go out, into the forest, right, and you trap one animal, whatever it is. It's not really that much. So he says the reason is because of the fish that you put out the net, you trap lots of fish, right? So we're talking about like dozens of fish you're trapping there. And you don't really need all these fish for Yom Tov, right? You only need like one or two, whatever. How many do you need? I mean, how much you're going to eat, right? So nevertheless, right, you're trapping like, dozens of them. So it's uvdin dechol. What does it mean, uvdin dechol? It's like, it's weekday activity. This is the reason why the rabbis decreed on this. Okay. So then he goes on, Mashkatab Yerushalmi, Masmichlu Akrai, right? It brings verses for this, right? As a source for all these prohibitions. היינו כלומר, דף אגב בירושלמי מייטה מקראי שלא יקצור ולא יברור ולא יקד ולא יטחון ביום טוב, אסמכתא בעלמא ננהו ואנן אסורין, אסורין, right? So he says something interesting, right? Which is an important, that even though in the Yerushalmi he brings verses, for these prohibitions. So you may think, well, if they come from the verses, they're from the Torah, aren't they? So comes and tells you, no, they're not. So then, how does that work? That sometimes, right, these are just allusions. We call it asmachta, right? These are allusions in the Torah, and the rabbis learned from these allusions to make a prohibition. So the truth is, right, even though it's written in the Torah, it's only an allusion, and came the rabbis and made a prohibition. So therefore, technically speaking, it's not from the Torah, it's from the rabbis, the prohibition. That's what we're saying. Okay, so that's good. And then he says, בדעת הר"ן, גם כן, בפרש פרק אין צדין, דן לך מלאכות אינן אסורות אלא מדרבי דבריהן. The Ran also agrees with the Rosh. that these labors are only forbidden from the rabbis and not from the Torah. Lefum Gemara Didan, according to our Gemara, right? ונתן טעם לדבר שהחכמים אסרו המלאכות הנעשות בימים הרבה ככסילה וטחינה כיוצא בהם ואף לכיתת פירות נספדים כתותים והענבים אסרו לפי שהלכו אחר רובה של כיתה שאינה ליומה ואף על פי שהתירו שחיקת הפלפלים. Right, so the Ran also is saying something similar to what the Rosh said, right? Which is that the rabbis are concerned that this is going to become like a very, laborious task, right? Going to get out of proportion, this kind of thing. Because once you start harvesting, you know what your Yetzer Hara will tell you, might as well finish, got the whole field, right? Yeah, it'll take, 5 hours, okay. So, finish the whole thing. And by the time you're done, right, you're so tired, you can't even, you don't have the energy to eat anymore, for your seudah for Yom Tov, which is very bad, right? You're supposed to have a seudah on Yom Tov, right? So it's going to make you miss your meals. By the way, just, to teach you, right, the proper way, on Shabbat, how many seudot do we have? We have 3, right? 3 meals on Shabbat. On Yom Tov, we have 2. So what does that mean? On Yom Tov, you're supposed to have 1 at night and 1 in the daytime. Right? That's the seudot of Yom Tov. Also, there is a machloket in the Talmud, right? Whether the seudot of Yom Tov require bread, or can you just have other things, have some, meat and potatoes, right? Whatever, something like that, right? So the truth is, right, that according on Shabbat, the halacha says we're required to have bread on the meals. On Yom Tov, it's a machloket, but right, the later authorities paskin that we have to have bread also for Yom Tov. So therefore, the proper thing to do is to wash your hands on Yom Tov and have a seudah, right? Just like you do on Shabbat. Except that on Shabbat we have 3, and on Yom Tov we have 2. That's the only difference, right? But otherwise, right, that's the way it is. I'll tell you something funny about that, right? Yesterday, I was going to shul, and, I saw one rabbi, he's from like Chabad over here, the local Chabad rabbi here. So he tells me, he says, we're having Seudat Mashiach, today, right? The last day of Passover, the custom, by Chabad is they have Seudat Mashiach, whatever. So he tells me, are you coming? I'm inviting you. So I was like, I was joking around with him. I was joshing with him. I told him, I said, if you bring Mashiach, I'll come. So I was being a wise guy, whatever. What I meant to say was, I really don't want to come. Why is that? Because really the truth is, that this custom, is not really practiced by everybody. It's like more like, the Chabad and, some Hasidic, sects. They have this custom to Seudat Mashiach. But we don't have this custom, the Sfaradim. We don't have this custom, so Maran, my rabbi, I never saw him doing Seudat Mashiach or even talking about this, whatever. The truth is, there's no source for this, whether it's in the Talmud or in the Kabbalah, there's no source for this Seudah. I don't know where they got them. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know where they got this from. But it just fits into this context over here, right? So on Yom Tov we have 2 seudot, not 3, right? So Seudat Mashiach would be the 3rd seudah. So we don't do that, right? That's not our custom, okay? Whatever it is, okay. To each his own. Okay. So anyway, I didn't go. I didn't go to this. Whatever it is, okay.
Where do we stand on the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Stand on the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov.
You're saying that the Baal Shem Tov brings that down? Is that what you're saying?
That's where they get it from.
Yeah, it's a Hasidic thing, whatever, It's, right, but, the question is, right, I hate to say this, but where did Baal Shem Tov get it? He's not a source, you know what I mean? the source has to be from Chazal, from the sages. I mean, so you can ask the same question about the Baal Shem Tov. Where does he get it from? That's anyway. It's the whole thing. Whatever it is, right?
Minhag.
Yeah, it's a minhag. Yeah, whatever. I just don't know what the the concept is there. I'm not really sure what 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 the reason is. I don't really know. I don't think anybody knows. They just do it, like whatever it is. I'm not really sure anybody knows what's going on. Yeah, this rabbi was telling me yesterday. Yeah, we have we in honor of Mashiach. We eat matzah and we drink wine. So I'm like thinking in my head, like, what does it have to do with Mashiach? Eating matzah and drinking wine. What's the connection? I don't get it. I don't know. How are you honoring Mashiach by doing this? I really have no idea. But your guess is as good as mine. I really don't know. So anyway, right? It is what it is. But I don't mean to be critical. By the way, don't get me wrong. But it says in the I don't like to put people down. Whatever. It's not nice. But anyway, right? It says in the Mishle, right? In the Proverbs, there's a verse over there. It says Peti Yamin lechol davar. You know what that means? The fool believes in everything. So what does that mean? Like a fool, anything he hears, he just like picks it up and he says, yeah, sounds good, yeah. But he doesn't analyze, like what's going on, like who said this, where does it come from? What I mean? What's the purpose of it? What does it do? What does it accomplish? Nobody knows. I don't know. So, a person has to be careful. When you hear some customs coming from people, I have this custom, that custom. The question is, yeah, you have this custom, but what's the source and what is the purpose of it? Like who made this custom? What I mean? Where did you get this from? Whatever, it is what it is. Anyway, right? So I don't know. Anyway, right, getting back to what we said. So we have on Yom Tov, as we said, right, we have 2 meals. So ולא הלכו אחר רובה של תחינה, היינו תמה לפי שאין אותה שחיקה שהוא ליומה נעשית באותו עניין, שהיא נעשית לימים הרבה. שזו במדוך וזו, I'm sorry, I skipped something here a little bit. One more, I'll go back. ואף על פי שהתירו שחיקת הפלפלים. So it says, right, that, but wait a second, right? We just said that grinding is forbidden on Yom Tov, right? That's one of the things they forbade, grinding. But wait a second, right? When it comes to grinding pepper, it's permitted to do that. We discussed this, by the way, last time, last week, whatever it was, that the rabbis did allow you to grind spices for Yom Tov. What's the purpose of that, by the way? Because as we said, the reason why we allow to grind spices is because it's fresher, and it gives you a better taste in your meal. So when you're doing it for the sake of the meal to make it taste better, that we allow. That's what he's saying, right? ולא הלכו אחר רובה של תחינה, היינו תמה לפי שאין אותו שחיקה שהיא נאמר נעשית באותו עניין, שהיא נעשית לימים הרבה, שזו למדוך וזו בירכיים, ואף פלפלין בירכיים שלהם אינה כדרך תחינת חיטים, לימים הרבה, ואף תחילת דגים. So he says, right, that it's different. Why? Another reason why he says, right, why it's different, besides the one I just gave you, which is that, when you grind pepper, right, you're doing it in like a small little, container, it's like a small scale. So you're not doing something on a large scale. So therefore, we're not really concerned, you're going to get into like some kind of a great, major grinding business over there, on Yom Tov, just because you're grinding, a little bit pepper, to put in your soup, right? What is that going to do, right? That's not going to take too much time, and it'll make your soup taste better. So why not, right, grind it up and put it in? That we allow you. Okay. Good. So he says also, right, after that dagim, also, right, it comes to, right, the trapping of the animals, right? Nami asur lefi she'en derech latzud otam יום לפי שסומך על הספק שלו לתקן מאכלו, שהרי אינו יודע אם תעלה מצוותו ריקנית. So he says, you know what? Also, the reason why they forbade to do trapping of animals is because, the way of the normal people, right, is that they already have like a certain amount of animals available, for slaughter. So they don't need to trap animals every day. It's not something you need to do on a daily basis. You already have, on your right in your farm, whatever it is, right, or on your livestock, you have enough supply for 1 or 2 days of Yom Tov, so it's no big deal. So what do you need to know? Go hunting now, right, and trap animals. What's the purpose of that? There's no purpose of it, right? That's why we don't allow it. Also, another thing he says is that it could be, even if you go trapping an animal, maybe you're not going to succeed, right? Maybe you're gonna fail. So, then what did you gain by doing that? What's the purpose of that, right? You're rolling the dice. You're like gambling. You don't even know if you're going to succeed. You don't know if your trap is going to trap anything. So then, what's the point? That's another reason why, right? He says you shouldn't do that. Reminds me of a funny story, by the way. There's a story in the Midrash, about this. It says, right, that when Yaakov Avinu sent out, Esav to bring him food so he could bless him. You know the story, right? So so the story goes like this, right? That it says in the Midrash that Esav went out, to trap an animal, right? To bring food for his father. That's what he did. He was a professional, this was his profession. So he went out, he was a man of the field, as they say, right? Literally. So he went out, and the Midrash says that, problem was he couldn't catch anything, They were all running away from him, like that, tough luck on you, like you can't catch nothing. So Esau was really getting frustrated, that they say, right? Chazal. And like he didn't know what to do. He was like, what's gonna be over here? My father's waiting for me. I gotta bring him something to eat, so he can bless me. This is my chance to get blessed. Right? So you know what he did in the end, right? They say the Midrash says what he did was he couldn't catch any animal. They all were running from him. So he took I don't want to say this, it's very sad, but he took a dog, and he slaughtered a dog. This is what he brought to his father. You believe this? Sounds like the Chinese people today. The Chinese, they love to eat dogs, like a delicacy by them. Can you imagine? This is the best he could do. He got a dog. So that's exactly what we're saying here, right? That sometimes you don't succeed. You go out, even if you're a professional guy, trapper, like Esav, you don't succeed. You come up, empty-handed. So what did you gain by that? You wasted a few hours looking for some animals, you couldn't catch nothing. That's the whole thing. Okay. Now we understand, right, what the Midrash says. The Midrash says that when Esav entered into the room, to get blessed by Yitzchak, so, he says the gates of Gehinnom, opened under him. And yet, Yitzchak was shocked by that because he could smell the smell of Gehinnom, even though he was blind, but he could smell it, and it was shocking for him that this was going on. When his son walks into the room, the gates of hell open up, Gehinnom. Can you imagine? This is what happens, So, now you can imagine why that happened, because he brought him a dog to eat. Can you imagine, according to this Midrash? He brought him a dog sandwich. Incredible. Okay, well, what can I tell you? So let's go on. So it says, "V'chen matin divrei Rambam perek aleph minchot Yom Tov." So he says that's the way the Rambam seems to go also. Shekol melechet ochel nefesh asura b'Yom Tov ena ela midivrehem. So the Rambam also says that, right? That every labor which is forbidden on Yom Tov, because and it's ochel nefesh, it's consumption labor. consumption related labor. Says the Rambam, these are only forbidden from the rabbis, not from the Torah. From the Torah, they're all permitted. So says Bet Yosef, but something still doesn't sit right here, with this whole thing. What doesn't sit right? But he says, you know what? You know why it doesn't sit right? Because according to Yerushalmi, as we said, right, Yerushalmi brings these from the verses. So it really implies, according to the simple meaning, that these prohibitions are from the Torah, not from the rabbis. So that's what the Ran says, right? This is not the Bet Yosef saying this. This is the Ran. The Ran is saying, right, that according to the simple meaning of the Yerushalmi, right, it seems like, and also there's a Braita as well. It seems like, these labors are forbidden from the Torah. So the Ran seems to have a problem with the Rambam here, but Bet Yosef already gave us an answer, by the way, for that. His answer was that these are only allusions. So they're not really forbidden from the Torah, which is called asmachta. Okay, good. Let's go on. Right, so then, right, it says, this language of Rambam. So it says the Rambam like this: every labor which it's possible to do on the eve of Yom Tov, before Yom Tov comes in, and there's not going to be any loss by doing it before. Only lacking. So if that's the case, the rabbis forbid to do it on Yom Tov. In other words, you don't lose nothing by doing it before. So they forbade you to do it on Yom Tov, right? So this is exactly where it comes in, right? What we said, that since the spices are more fresh when you grind them right on the spot, and they give you a nice tangy taste in your food, so that the Rambam would allow, because there's a loss there if you grind it before. But if you grind it, so therefore the Rambam will allow you to do that. But something which there's no loss by doing it before, it's not going to come out more delicious or better or whatever. So then why do it? Why do it right on Yom Tov? What's the purpose of that? That's what the Rambam is telling you. Okay, good. So it goes on, right? It says, even though it's for the sake of consumption, yes, it is. But nevertheless, right, you could have done this before. Why are you doing it now? ולמה עשו דבר זה גזירה שמי יניח אדם מלאכות שאפשר לעשותן מלב יום טוב ונמצא יום טוב כולו הולך בעשיית אותן מלאכות. So it says, right, why the rabbis forbid these labors? Because, right, we want you to have time to do the mitzvot of Yom Tov, and therefore, right, whatever you can do before Yom Tov, the labors you can do beforehand, we don't want you doing them on Yom Tov, because, we want you to enjoy your Yom Tov. Not, just be like a laborer, all the time. That's not what we want. Okay. So then he emphasizes this more. So what's going to be is, right, you're going to be doing labor all your holiday, right? You're going to be laboring all the time. Good. And you're going to be, right, refraining from doing the simcha of Yom Tov. You're not going to have time to eat, right? So when you're going to eat, you're working all the time, right? What is the Yom Tov is a work day? That's not what it's for. Okay. So he says, because of this reasoning that we just mentioned, says the Rambam, they did not forbid, right, to carry on Yom Tov. This they didn't touch. Even though, right, it says that carrying is also one of the labors, forbidden labors, and you could have done it before. So then why didn't they forbid it? Because this helps you to do more simcha on Yom Tov, right? To enjoy the Yom Tov even more. The fact that you were allowed to carry. So why is that? This way you can bring all the stuff you really want, right? You want to enjoy. You you can carry it from one place to another, right? This helps you, to enjoy it even more. The fact that you can move stuff around. So what does that mean, right? That when you can carry, you're free to do what you want and to enjoy better, right? The Yom Tov. But it says when it comes to other labors, you could have done it on Erev Yom Tov, right? Before Yom Tov. Right? And they're like, laborious things, right? And we shouldn't do them Yom Tov. Okay. By the way, according to what we're saying, just to to give you a little taste of this, right? Would you be allowed to bake bread on Yom Tov? Would that be okay, according to what we said?
In theory.
Yeah. So the truth is, right? Not even in theory, in practice also, right? You're allowed to bake bread on Yom Tov, make chalot, whatever, right? Why is that? Because it's going to be more fresh, right? You can't compare the bread that you have made today, with what you made yesterday, right? The fresh bread is much better, obviously, right? You're going to enjoy that a lot more. So therefore, right, you want to bake chalot on Yom Tov, be my guest, no problem, right? Just do it the right way, according to halacha, right? That's it, right? So what does that mean? Make sure you take from an existing fire, right? And you light up your oven from an existing fire, right? Whatever it is, right? Whether it's a pilot light or some memorial candle you have on the table, you gotta take from the existing candle. That's the way it is, right? You can't light a new fire. Okay, so that's the thing. But to make bread, it's a mitzvah. Why? Because you're gonna really enjoy it, right? So come on, can't fresh bread. What compares to that, right? With all due respect, right, to freezing, but freezing is nice, but fresh bread is fresh bread. Okay, you get the point. So yeah, let's go on. But it says, right, but it says when it comes to, right, other labors, as we said, right, which are, very cumbersome, right, and, lots of work going on there, and you could have done it before, and you wouldn't lose nothing by doing it before. So then we tell you, you know what, don't do it on Yom Tov. So he gives you examples right now. Kids had how so? That's why we shouldn't do harvesting, right, reaping on Yom Tov. What difference does it make if you reap on Yom Tov or before Yom Tov? It's going to taste any better for you? It's all the same, right? How's it going to help you? Right? Velo zorin, and also, right, we don't do winnowing, right? Sifting, velo dashin, right? All these kinds of things like this, threshing, right? Velo borin, and also, right, sifting out, velo tuchanin, and grinding, right? Et achitin, to grind the wheat, right? So it tells you dafka the wheat, right? Why the wheat? Because the wheat, usually you do like large amounts, and there's no gain in doing that on Yom Tov, right? It's not going to taste better because you grind it on Yom Tov, the wheat. So therefore, we forbade that, right? Velo zorin, velo dashin, velo borin, right? Also, right, we don't, as we said, all these things we don't do. We don't sift, right? Sifting. And things like this, he says, if shar, lasot be'erev Yom Tov. Because all these things you could do erev Yom Tov, right? Not going to make it taste any better or worse. Right? Right? But he says, right, there are certain things which we're allowed to do on Yom Tov, right? Labors. So he brings the examples, right? Lashin, right? What does that mean? Kneading, right? Kneading the dough to make your challah. We can bake also, right? You can bake. You want to bake your challah? Be my guest. Right? You can also slaughter. So now let me ask you a question, right? Why is it allowed to slaughter on Yom Tov? What's the advantage with that? Why don't you do it the day before? So the trick is like this, that freshly slaughtered meat tastes better, right? That's what the rabbis say. So therefore, the meat that you slaughtered today will taste better than what you slaughtered yesterday. Because after all, it does rot. After the slaughter, it starts to rot. So it's not the same thing. Right? Today we have refrigeration, we have freezing. That helps us a lot. But nevertheless, by the way, it's still allowed to slaughter if you really want to do that. Nobody does it today, because today we have other means, of doing these things, and we don't slaughter anyway in the house, So, there's it doesn't really exist today, this concept so much. But technically speaking, you're allowed to if that's your thing, right? We can cook, right? Obviously, right? You can't compare, right, the freshly cooked stuff. Usually it tastes better. There are some foods which taste better when they sit for a while. That's true. But in general, right, when you cook something fresh, nice and fresh, nothing like that, right? You can't compare anything to that. That's why when you go to a restaurant, right, you want to have freshly made food, right? You don't want to give you food from yesterday. Yeah, we made this yesterday. I'm paying you $50 for yesterday. I don't want to pay for that, right? I want something you made today, just now. When I walked into the restaurant, right? That's what I want. Right? That's the idea. Okay, good. So he says, right? He brings all these examples that we said, right? Yesh bechach beb said. So he says there's nothing like hot bread, right? Hot bread. Oh, I want to bake it today. It's hot. Nothing tastes as good as that. I'll tell you guys something really funny, right? Which bears out the point. How hot bread is really, really good, right? We have here downstairs. Whoever has visited me over here knows. Right? We have here downstairs a bakery that bakes, like this Bukharian bread, which is really good stuff. And people ask me, by the way, are you Bukharian? I'm not Bukharian, but there's a Bukharian bakery which has really good bread, and they have like a brick oven, which is in the ground, like a special oven for that. The old school, the old school oven, you know what I mean? Whatever. So they have a special oven, and it tastes really, really good. So what I do is, now I learned a trick, which is, like before Shabbat, I want to get like really fresh bread for Shabbat. So what I do is I go down there like 2 hours before Shabbat starts, and I buy like freshly made baked bread. They're still baking like 2 hours before Shabbat. So it's still hot. And right, so I go, then I go to the dry cleaners to pick up my, shirts, my suit, whatever it is, right? And the lady over there, right? She's not Jewish, but like Korean, whatever she is, right? Nice lady. She always smells my bread, that I bought at the bakery, and she tells me, like, "Oh my God, that smells heavenly." I told her, I said, "No problem, go across the street. Right? It's only $2. No big deal." So, fresh bread, right? Everybody likes fresh bread, hot bread, right? Even a guy, whatever, right? Can appreciate that, right? No, nobody, no, we all have the same taste buds. No, there's no difference, right? So that's the way it is, right? So yeah, so that's what the Rambam is telling you here.
That will be my weakness, the bread being so close to me.
Exactly. Some people are really drawn by that, right? When they smell the hot bread, it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but when I bring the bread to my house, my mother also smells it, and she gets like really drawn to it. She wants to like break it. So I tell her, no, don't break it yet. We have to wait for Shabbat. We can't break the bread now. You have to break it when you bless on it. So she wants to break it right. So I prevent her from doing it. I feel bad, but what can you do, right? That's the way it goes.
So I do have a question. So when you go pick up
Yeah.
bread, do you eat a piece? Is that why the Korean lady can smell it?
No, she just smells it because it's in the bag. Like I have it in the bag. You know what I mean? And I put it on the counter, and she smells it.
I thought you had a piece.
No, I'm not eating it there. No.
Oh.
So right, that's too early for that, right? So right, That's the whole thing, by the way, in itself. There's a halacha. You're not supposed to eat in the street. You're not supposed to eat in the marketplace, right? That's not a good place to eat. Anyway, right, getting back to what we said. So these things, you're allowed to do them on Yom Tov, no problem. Right? So it says, right, O tavshil shebishel hayom kelechem shenefer memesh tavshil memesh velo basar shenishchat hayom b'kasar v'shchat memesh. Rambam says exactly what I just told you, right? The Chon Kodesh says all these things, when it comes to baking, when it comes to cooking, right? When it comes to slaughtering, you can't compare what was done today, the taste of it, to what was done yesterday. It's not the same taste. It's a different world. So that's the reason why we allow you to do these things. To get that special taste, for Yom Tov. Yeah. That's the whole thing. Okay, you get the point. I don't want to make you hungry. I'm sorry if I Okay. So it ends over here, right? It says in the Rambam comes to an end. So the Rambam says anything which is similar to that, right? You're allowed to do, right? Basically, right? Whatever fits into this context. You're allowed to do things like this on Yom Tov. Okay, so then he goes on. So it says, Ve'aravad isigo, ve'arava magid ta'an ba'ado. So he says that the Ravad here argues with the Rambam about this. And the Rabbi Magid comes in to defend him, right? Katav od ve'ani omer shemelechet avodah kolel כל מה שדרך העבד לעשות לאדוניו, ואין רוב בני אדם עושים אותם לעצמם, אלא שוכרים אחרים לעשותן לפי שהוזהרנו במלאכות אלו, לזכור כי היינו עבדים והיינו עושים במלאכה הרבה לאדוננו, אבל כל מלאכה שדרך רוב בני אדם לעשותה, כל אחד בביתו ולעצמו לא הוזהרנו. So he says, right, he adds some extra points over here, the Rabbi Magid. So he says, right, he differentiates between labors which are done by us ourselves, or done by our servants. He wants to make this differentiation like this. So he says the things that our servants do, where we shouldn't be doing those things. The things that we do ourselves, we should be doing those things. Let's see what that means, right? We'll see. I'm trying to understand what that means. So he says that's because it's not like, it's not labor for laborers, for slaves, whatever, right? For servitude. Shegam ha'adonim osim otam. So he says even the masters do them, So right, ולזה כל המלאכה שאדם עושה ממנה לעצמו לימים הרבה, דרך לעשותה על ידי האחרים, כגון הברירה והקצירה והתחינה והרקדה, אבל אפייה ולישה ושחיטה ובישול, בן אדם מכין בהם לימים הרבה, ורוב בני אדם עושים אותן לעצמן. So, right, he wants to differentiate it this way, right? A little bit different than the Rambam. He wants to say it really has to do, right? In other words, the differentiation that we make between this labor and that labor has to do with something we do directly ourselves or our servants do it. Whatever. I think the Rambam's idea is much more simple and easy to understand. Whatever, but whatever it is, right? It is what it is. כתב עוד שיש מי שסובר שהתחינה וקצירה אסורים דבר תורה מפני שעושים מהם לימים הרבה ונטלו בזה בסוגיות הגמרא ואף על פי שאינן מוכיחות עד כלשונו, right? So he says here that there's also other opinions, which hold that these labors are not forbidden from the rabbis, they're forbidden from the Torah, as we said, right? There's a machloket. He points that out. So it says, כתב סלמג בדתנן והמלח במדוך של עץ למדנו שכל מלאכת אוכל נפש מותר על ידי שינוי אפילו בדבר שאינו מפיג טעמו ואפשר לעשות מערב של יום טוב. So he says, right, that another thing he points out, right, this rabbi, is that what about pounding some salt, right? To pound salt. Today we don't pound salt, right? We pick it up at the store, right? That's it. But in the old days, they used to pound it, to grind it up, right? So the question is, are you allowed to do this on Yom Tov or not? Will the salt taste any better if you pound it today as opposed to yesterday? No, right? It's the same taste, right? The taste of the salt doesn't change. Just because you freshly pound it, right? It doesn't help you. So the question is, are you allowed to pound salt on Yom Tov? So he says, right, that you're allowed. But, since it's not something which tastes better, right, when you do it fresh, and you could have done it really yesterday, right? So therefore you should do it with a shinui, do it in a different manner, right? In an unorthodox manner. So this way, right, it becomes more like less of a prohibition this way. You know, there's a general rule by the way in halakha, is that certain things which are prohibited, you can do them with a shinui, right, with a different method, an unusual method, right? That's what we call that. Okay, let's see Shulchan Aruch and we're done, right? So let's see the bottom line, right? After we learned all this stuff, the smorgasbord, we got the whole thing here. Let's see the halakha bottom line. So the truth is, Shulchan Aruch is very short, right? So let's see what it says here. כצירה ותחינה ובצירה וסחיטה וצידה, אף על פי שהן מלאכת אוכל נפש, אסרום חכמים. Very simple, right? He says that when it comes to harvesting, right, reaping, grinding, right, and squeezing, right, and hunting, trapping, right, even though these are labors which are for the sake of consumption, so you would think that they're allowed, right? So come tell you Shulchan Aruch, nevertheless, right, the rabbis forbade them. So first of all, right, what's the first thing? That he paskins like the opinion, like the Rambam, who says that these are rabbinically forbidden, right? But from the Torah, they're allowed. Not like the Ran, right, or whatever, the other opinions that we saw there, who held that, they were from the Torah. That's one thing. Shulchan Aruch paskins, they're not from the Torah, right? That's one thing. And also, right, the other thing is that these labors, as we said, right, they're forbidden because, they, first of all, they can be very cumbersome. They can be very laborious, right? They're very tedious kind of work. They can, they'll block you from enjoying the Yom Tov properly. That's one thing, right? Another thing we said is that, they're not really going to taste any better by doing these things, right today than doing it yesterday. So therefore, the rabbis had no reason to permit you to do these things. So therefore, these labors, even though from the Torah we allow them, but right, the rabbis forbade them. But we did say, right, also another thing, which is that to pound spices, right, even though it's grinding, that we allow. Right? Why is that? Because it tastes better when you do it fresh. So therefore, the rabbis did not forbid that. We also gave another reason, which usually it's done on a smaller scale, right? So therefore, we're not afraid that it's going to ruin your, enjoyment of Yom Tov. Okay, I hope you got everything I told you. B'ezras Hashem, so we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. And Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You have any questions? Let me know.
Thank you so much, Kavod Hara.
God bless. All the best.
Thank you.